Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, breaking down two new mock drafts that just came out. We're going to be looking at who they had the Texans selecting, and I'll let you know whether or not I think they're actually a good fit with the Texans in this year's draft. But before we get to that, I have a pressing matter. I've talked about it before. The closest channel to us is our Commanders channel, and they are gaining ground. Now, they just had a lot of breaking news. They had a new head coach, new offensive coordinator hiring, but I want to hit 11K before they do. Our Commanders host is talking the most shit to me right now, saying, hey, I'm telling you, there's more Commanders fans out there than Texans fans. Let's prove him wrong. Let's hit 11K before they do. Go down and hit that sub button if you haven't already. If you want daily Texans news and rumors content, I'm bringing you the best Texans content on YouTube, and we are the fastest growing Texans channel on YouTube. So don't let me lose to my coworker in a subs battle. Let's beat him to 11K. Go down and hit that sub button. Now, first, let's look at the ESPN mock that just came out with Matt Miller, a 2-round mock draft for the Texans. They obviously have a pick in the first and a pick in the second round. So 2 picks I'm going to be breaking down for our Houston Texans. First off, it is KoolAid McKinstry, cornerback out of the University of Alabama. And I know first thing you're going to say, we're going to get it out of the way. Oh, yeah! Okay, we got that joke out of the way. We have everything on that side. Thank you, producer Cullen, for, going with the bit for that. So now let's actually break down KoolAid. I had to do it. I had Texas taking KoolAid. If they do it on draft day, I'm going to do it too. You got to do the joke. Now let's actually break down the prospect that is Mr. McKinstry. This is what Matt Miller had to say. Houston can form a rock star lineup at cornerback with McKinstry lining up opposite Derek Stingley Jr. McKinstry was a consistent playmaker throughout his college career, snagging 2 interceptions at Alabama and deterring opposing quarterbacks from targeting his side of the field. He will have to answer questions about his true speed at the combine, but his 3 years of tape tell me he is a first rounder. Now, granted, these guys were all on the board, which very surprisingly, in my opinion, all these guys were on the board in this mock draft by Matt Miller. The Texans could have had Troy Fautanu. They could have had Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, Darius Robinson out of Mizzou, Latu out of UCLA, or Nate Wiggins. All these guys I wouldn't have minded either as a Texans player that they took in this draft, but they went with McKinstry. And let's take a look at his last 2 years at Alabama. And I want to also note that this year at Alabama, he was targeted about half the amount of times as he was targeted in 2022. So not nearly the amount of balls thrown his way as were last year, because I know what you're saying. 15 pass breakups to 7. An interception, he didn't have one this past year. But teams were not throwing his way, which usually for a cornerback is a good thing. I think McKinstry is a solid prospect and could develop into a great cornerback in the National Football League. So I want to ask you this question right off the bat. If the Texans on draft day, they bring down the card and they say, oh yeah, KoolAid McKinstry to the Houston Texans, what grade would you give it? An A, B, C, D, or F? Let me know down in the comment section. This is actually the pinned comment on today's video. So there's a YouTube ad break here. Perfect timing. Go down and let me know. What would be your grade for the pick of KoolAid McKinstry in round 1? Next up in round 2, they had the Texans taking Leonard Taylor, which in theory, I love what Matt Miller's doing here. 2 big needs for the Houston Texans, especially if they don't address it in free agency, which is cornerback and defensive tackle. This is what Matt Miller had to say on the Texans selecting Leonard Taylor. Here, the Texans can land a replacement defensive tackle for Sheldon Rankins. The Hurricanes defense asked Taylor to play primarily nose tackle in 2023, which limited his pass rush opportunities. But the tape shows the quickness and instincts to be a productive gap player. Taylor has 27 career tackles for loss across 31 games, and his best football is still ahead of him. And I completely agree. And just a little note that I wanted to kind of piggyback off of Matt Miller on this. They had him play a lot of nose tackle this past year. Not a lot of 3 technique, which if you're not, in tune with the football lingo, nose tackle means they're lining him up predominantly over the center. He's in the very middle of that defensive line where, three technique, that means you're between the guard and the tackle, usually a better opportunity to rush the passer. And last season, not in 2023, but in 2022, whenever he was put more in a pass rushing role, he had a 19.5% pressure win rate, which only trailed Kalijah Kancey, who was drafted in the first round this past year by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a really good rookie defensive lineman for them this past year, only trailed him in interior pressure win rate. So Lawrence Taylor, when given the opportunity, or Leonard Taylor, Lawrence Taylor, great. That would be a great pick for the Texans too if they were somehow able to get Lawrence Taylor. Leonard Taylor would be a really good pick for the Houston Texans, and when given pass rush opportunities, has taken advantage of them. This past year, not so much out of the University of Miami, but I think adding him along with Will Anderson Jr., who really showed out in his rookie year, would be a good start at a great pass rush and a great front four for this Texans defensive line. I've said it once and I'll say it again. NFL games are won in the trenches. So if you can get some more talent up front along with Will Anderson, I think that's a plus for the Houston Texans. Now coming up, I'm going to be analyzing another mock draft that came out this week, this time from our friends over at PFF. So I'll be looking at that, another two-round mock. They have two completely different guys who the Texans are taking. I'm going to be taking a look at that in just a moment. But first, today's show wouldn't be possible without our sponsor, PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. It's as easy as this. You pick two or more players, choose more or less on their projected stat types, and place your entry. Quick withdrawals and easy gameplay is why PrizePicks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And if you're wondering, hey, big game this Sunday, what are you choosing for your PrizePicks, Jeremy? Well, I got you covered. No worry about that. They're giving you a freebie. Patrick Mahomes, I hope it's a freebie. If it's not, producer Cullen, big trouble for the Chiefs this weekend. But they're giving you 0.5 pass yards for Patrick Mahomes. So basically, all you got to hit is 2. So these are the 2 that I went with. Isaiah Pacheco, more than 0.5 rushing or receiving touchdowns. He's had a touchdown in his past 6 games. I think this is, I'm not going to say lock, but I think it's a lock. Also, Brock Purdy has been balling out this postseason. Give me more than 248.5 pass yards. Hey, use my picks or you can fade my picks. Just do it over at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. I have that link in the comment section and the description of today's video. Go check them out, our friends over at PrizePicks. Now, PFF's latest 2-round mock draft. Let's take a look at it and see who they had the Texans taking in rounds 1 and 2. Now, they kind of went with a similar thought process, which obviously this is a little wrong, but it's okay. We can push it anyway. This is the PFF mock draft for Jer'Zhan Newton. That's who they had the Texans taken in round 1. Obviously, we look at the stats. An absolute baller. 52 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss in 2023. He was a man on a mission for the Illini this past season, and his PFF numbers, they don't lie. Overall grade of 84.9, 77.1 in the run defense, and an 84.1 pass rush grade. Jer'Zhan Newton has been fantastic this year, and there's a reason why many regard him as the #1 defensive tackle in this year's draft. I certainly think he is a first-round talent, and if he makes it to the Texans, which I don't know if he even makes it all the way to 23, but if he does and the Texans select him, I will be jumping for joy. I absolutely love the pick of Jer'Zhan Newton. I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. Jer'Zhan Newton is a great choice for the Texans at 23 if he makes it there. And I think if he's there at 23, I would want the Texans to take him because I really would like them to take a defensive tackle in this year's draft. I would like them to take offense or defensive line in round 1 just because I think the talent there is harder to get in free agency than other positions. But I'm a man of the people. I want to hear from you folks at home. What position do you think the Texans should take in round 1? Do you think it should be wide receiver? Do you think it should be cornerback? Do you think it should be running back? Let me know down in the comment section what position should the Texans take in round 1 if you were calling the shots. Now, for round 2, they went wide receiver for our Houston Texans. And they went, I know a lot of you have been saying this name down in the comments section, and you'll be happy. PFF had the Texans taking Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. I mean, the number 1 target for Quinn Ewers this past year, along with Xavier Worthy. Maybe a better receiving prospect than Xavier Worthy. He's a big-bodied guy, 6'4", 196 pounds. Obviously, 55 receptions, 845 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Like I said, a number 1 option in that Texas offense that really like to air the ball out. And as we look at Adonai Mitchell's advanced analytics this past year, a drop percentage of 1.8. He only dropped 1 ball all of 2023. Yards per reception was 15.4. Really good. Was able to stretch the field for that Longhorns offense. A CC rate of 36.4 and an ADOT of 16. All of the advanced analytics for Adonai Mitchell are off the charts. He is definitely a first, second round talent in this year's draft. And I really like the idea of pairing him with a guy like Nico Collins. And I wanted to put this up. I know I've done a lot of, stats for you. And you're like, oh, well, these guys can't play in the slot. We need another slot guy. Well, Nico Collins played about 20% of his snaps in the slot. And then I said Tank Dell is a slot guy, and people have kind of refuted that, but Tank Dell as well. About 29% of his snaps are in the slot. They're going to move all these guys around throughout different formations, and if they select Mitchell, all 3 of these guys are going to play in the slot at some point. Basically, I'm saying I think he would add another element to this wide receiver room, and I think you could do a lot with these 3 guys, with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Adonai Mitchell. I think they're all 3 versatile and bring different things to the table. And I think if you add another guy to this wide receiver room, another weapon for C.J. Stroud, this offense is going to take it to the next level under Bobby Slowick in 2024. Now, that's all I have for you on today's show. If you haven't already, hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. I'm actually in Las Vegas right now for the Super Bowl. That's why a couple of less videos than normal this week. I'm going to be out doing a media row out in Las Vegas. So if you want to follow along my journey, I'll try to post a little bit more than I usually do on Twitter of all my stuff going on in Las Vegas. But if you want to check out that, hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. And another reminder, I'm trying to get to 11K subs by the end of the week. Don't let the stinking Commanders report beat us, because we didn't let him have Bobby Slowick. We're not going to let him have this either. So go down and hit that sub button right now. Go to youtube.com/TexansTV or send it to a friend and say, hey, go subscribe to this awesome Texans channel.